Monaco is more than just a race. It is a drama played out against the glittering backdrop of the world's most exclusive playground, from the mansions of old Monaco to the casinos of Monte-Carlo. Today, for the 52nd year, the power of Formula 1 and the passion of exotic Monaco are joined, and your seat awaits for the grandest Grand Prix of all. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. On the shores of the blue Mediterranean lies the world's most famous harbor, home for more than a half century to the world's most famous motor race. On all the planet, there is no other place and no other race like the Grand Prix of Monaco. And high above that famous harbor lies the beautiful palace that has been home for more than 1,000 years to Prince Renier and his ancestors. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Barsha, proud to welcome you to the palace, to the harbor, and to one of the world's truly special places. For more than that 1,000 years, the Principality of Monaco has been treasured for its timelessness. The very wealthy could come here and enjoy their good fortune in peace and security, while those of us who dream of such a lifestyle can come here and rub shoulders with the rich and famous without fear of contradiction or complaint. This year, the World Driving Championship has come to Monaco for the most famous race in all the world, hoping for a little of that Monaco magic to help rid itself of some of the horrors of the last 2 weeks. At the Grand Prix of San Marino in Imola, Italy, 2 weeks ago, two drivers, Austrian Roland Ratzenberger and the three-time world champion Ayrton Senna of Brazil, perished in separate racing accidents. The first drivers in some 12 years to die on a Formula 1 Grand Prix weekend. Sadly, even Monaco magic would not be enough for Formula 1 in 1994. In the closing laps of the very first practice session, Austrian Karl Wendlinger apparently missed his braking point in his Sauber and clouded the trackside guardrail at the harborside chicane. He was taken from the car unconscious, and he lies in a hospital in Nice, France, just down the Riviera, fighting for his life. But Formula 1 has mobilized itself to answer some of the problems that have come up in the last 2 weeks. There are some changes that have been made for this very race. And for more on that now, let's go to my colleague for this weekend, former sports car world champion, Derek Bell.
Following the tragedies of the past 2 weeks, both at Imola and here at Monaco, the FIA announced yesterday massive changes in the safety rules for the future of Grand Prix racing. At the beginning of the pits, we're going to have a chicane. At the end of the pits, we will have a chicane. And in the middle, there'll be a speed detector. In fact, poor old Pedro Lamy only yesterday got a $5,000 fine for exceeding the speed limit. Over the ensuing few Grand Prix, major changes will be brought in for the safety of Formula 1 racing. Those will begin, obviously, with aerodynamic changes, followed by major engine changes to reduce the power from something like 800 horsepower down to 600. Max Mosley told us that this was, in fact, of course, due to the tragedies of the past 2 weeks, and something major had to be done.
A lot of these things we've been wanting to bring in for a long time, but we have this arrangement called the Concord Agreement, which is a contract with the teams where we're not allowed to change regulations unless they all agree, and getting them all to agree is almost impossible. Now because of what's happened, we've really been able to say, I'm sorry, but we'll discuss, and we've been discussing ever since Imola. We've listened to everybody, we've heard all the different opinions. In the end, we are the governing body, we've got to govern. Somebody's got to make a decision, we can't go on talking about it, so we've done that.
That was International Federation President Max Mosley, and we'll have more on the decisions he talked about as the day goes on. Right now, let's meet the third member of our Grand Prix broadcast team, a man eminently qualified to talk about the drivers. He is an active Grand Prix driver, though he will not compete today for the Jordan Racing team. Here is Eddie Irvine.
Thanks, Bob. After the sad events of the last two races, the drivers have decided to get together to reform the Grand Prix Drivers Association. We feel, as we drive the cars at all these circuits, that we know better than anyone where the dangerous parts on the circuits are, where the cars can be improved to make them safer. And we have decided that if we get together, voice our opinions between each other, then when we decide what we feel is the best way to go, we can go to the FIA, tell them what we think, hopefully they will listen to us, and then maybe Formula 1 can be safer for everyone.
All right, thank you, Eddie, and welcome. We'll take a quick time out and then return to set the starting grid for the grandest Grand Prix of all, the Grand Prix of Monaco. Stay with us. In the town of Monte-Carlo, below the ancient hill on which the village of Old Monaco sits. I'm Bob Varsho along with Derek Bell and Eddie Irvine. Now let's check out our lineup with the help of our Yamaha starting grid. On the pole for the first time in his remarkable Formula 1 career, Michael Schumacher of Germany in the Benetton Ford, and he did it with style, a record lap averaging 94.5 miles per hour. Next to him, Mika Hakkinen of Finland on his very first Grand Prix front row start for McLaren Peugeot. Row 2 will be Gerhard Berger of Austria in the Ferrari, providing new leadership for the leaderless Formula 1 driving fraternity. Next to him, Damon Hill of Great Britain, and the only Williams-Renault entered in this race. Frank Williams and his team chose not to enter a second car in deference to the late Ayrton Senna. Row 3, Jean Alesi of France, back in harness for Ferrari after his big testing crash. Next to him, Christian Fittipaldi of Brazil, equaling the footwork team's best qualifying performance of the year. Row 4 will be Fittipaldi's teammate Gianni Morbidelli of Italy in the second footwork, next to the McLaren of Martin Brundle of Great Britain. Row 5, Pierluigi Martini of Italy in the second Minardi, next to the Tyrrell of Mark Blundell. Row 6 will be Ukio Katayama of Japan in the second Tyrrell, next to the Minardi of Michele Alboreto of Italy. Row 7 will be Eric Comas of France in the LaRousse Ford, next to the Jordan Hart of Andrea de Cesaris of Italy, sitting in for the suspended Eddie Irvine. Row 8 will be Rubens Barrichello of Brazil in the Jordan, next to the Lotus of Johnny Herbert of Great Britain. Row 9, JJ Leto of Finland, scrambling to find grip in the second Benetton, next to Olivier Beretta, one of 12 drivers in this field that calls the Principality of Monaco his home. Row 10 will be Pedro Lamy of Portugal in the Lotus, next to the Ligier of Olivier Panis of France. Row 11, Eric Bernard of France in the Ligier, next to the Simtek of Australian David Brabham. Simtek, in deference to the late Roland Ratzenberger, also not entering a second car. The final row is number 12, with Bertrand Gachot of France and his teammate Paul Belmondo in the Pacific Ilmor cars. The Sauber team chose to withdraw from this Grand Prix of Monaco following the accident suffered Thursday by Karl Wendlinger. Here's a look at our weather conditions. An absolutely glorious day. A warm 78 degrees, very light winds out of the northeast. The humidity at 63%. We expect no precipitation throughout the day. A list of former winners of this great race includes most of the greatest names in Formula 1 history, with a few notable exceptions, among them Nigel Mansell, the 1992 world champion, who never won on the streets of the Principality. But he had a great race indeed with Ayrton Senna back in '92. Senna is, in fact, the only name you need to know recently. He won 6 out of the last 7 Grands Prix here, and he led the 7th before crashing. There have been many memorials to the memory of Ayrton Senna. Among them, in the garage area, there you see the Brazilian flag standing in the Williams pit. Another tribute to the late 3-time world champion. Our Formula 1 fact, today there is no former winner of this race who will take part in the 52nd running of the Grand Prix of Monaco. The course is some 2 miles around. It's known as the racetrack of 1,000 corners. It's a few less than that. Derek Bell, your analysis.
Well, here we are, of course, coming up into the most important place of all the circuits we go to of the year, when you need to be in pole position, because the man in pole position can dominate the race, he can control the race. As you storm up the hill at 160 miles an hour to the casino, down through the tunnel, working your way up to 175 miles an hour, down through the tobacco, along past the swimming pool, round the Raskas and up towards the finish line, you're cruising along at 160 miles an hour.
Hard to jam a 2-mile race course into a Principality that is barely 1 square mile in area. As I mentioned, there have been many tributes as you see the cars making their way around. Let's get more on that tribute story now with Eddie Irvine.
The grid today is going to be left vacant in remarkable respect to Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna. Roland was a great friend of mine. He was a resident of Monaco, and it was sad that his Grand Prix career was ended before it got started. Ayrton, of course, was the king of Monaco, 6 wins in the last 7 years and 3 times world champion. And really, it's a great loss to the sport, and the front row of the grid will be left vacant as a mark of respect. Back to you, Bob.
All right, thank you, Eddie. Here is a look at the point standings in the World Championship coming in. Obviously, it has been Michael Schumacher, 3 straight victories, a maximum of 30 points, a 23-point lead over Damon Hill and the rest of the field as you see them. The cars are making their way around the pool area along the harbor, led by pole sitter Michael Schumacher, another milestone in his great Formula 1 career. We had Pedro Lamy stalled off the starting grid, but he eventually got the Lotus fired up and is making his way around now. There you see the field coming around. It's hard to overstate the importance of precision racing at Monaco. As you can see, the Armco, the guardrails are right at curbside. And as you mentioned, Derek Bell, the speeds here can be absolutely tremendous.
Yes, they're pulling, as I said, 170 odd miles an hour coming out of the tunnel. You're coming out of the darkness into the daylight, down into this very, very fast chicane. It's a very tricky circuit and absolutely vital to be online. You cannot afford to make any errors at all. There's no runoff area. In fact, the curbs, do lean out underneath the guardrail.
As you can see, there are several onboard cameras today. This is the most important first corner in all of Formula 1. Needless to say, it's a run of a few hundred yards. They will arrive at the sharp right-hander at Saint-Devote, a little cathedral tucked into a gorge in a far corner of this tiny principality. And the first man there often determines what happens in the race. Get set. Mika Hakkinen chopping across the field, gets sideways and tags the guardrail with a little help from someone behind him. He's in the runoff area at Saint-Devote. It might have been Damon Hill who got him from behind. It looks like one of the Tyrrells is also into the guardrail.
All over for Hakkinen, and that's a great pity. He looked so determined in qualifying all through the weekend, and I thought he was really going to give this man Schumacher a real run for his money. But fortunately, the rest of the field basically got through as clean as a whistle.
You see them making a run down to Mirabeau, the hotel at that corner. Now a sharp downhill run to this, the Lowe's hairpin, once known as the station hairpin. Here's another look.
Hakkinen got tapped. Damon took him.
Came across Damon Hill's right front wheel. I didn't see who spun the Tyrrell into the guardrail in the background, but there you see Mika Hakkinen out of his machine. No sign of a red flag. I believe the race is still underway as leader Michael Schumacher makes his first pass along the harbor.
Yeah, it's such a great pity, of course, that we haven't got Hakkinen in there, because I felt he was really going to give this man a real run for his money, and you can see he's got a fairly good lead already. There's Damon Hill staggering along very slowly, obviously out of the race, his wheels pointing in different directions at the front end. What an awful weekend for Damon. He qualified finally very well, but he had all sorts of problems during the weekend and the build-up to the race.
And what a horrible moment for Frank Williams, of whom it is said he did not want to bring his team to this race at all in deference to Ayrton Senna. But he was convinced to bring a car for Damon Hill. Hill is now out of the race. Michael Schumacher leads. Christian Fittipaldi in the footwork was the other car out at Saint-Devote. It was not one of the Tyrrells, it was the footwork.
Yellow flags going down into Mirabeau. We've had a very determined Berger here this weekend, and he's been driving extremely hard, extremely in a dedicated way, and it'll be interesting to see just how he gets on pushing Schumacher.
Now here's a view of the start from the Ferrari of Jean Alesi with Hakkinen just in front of him. Damon Hill to the left, going behind the rearview mirror. Oh, that's the other Ferrari. Beg your pardon, it's Gerhard Berger just ahead of him. Hakkinen is already off. And as you saw, Hill moved just to the left. Now let me correct myself. It was not Christian Fittipaldi, but his teammate Gianni Morbidelli who is out of the race. And that'll come as good news to Uncle Emerson, who we understand is watching at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where they will be qualifying later today here on ESPN.
Yes, I think this must be the highest place young Christian's been so soon, so early in the race. It's great to see he's, again, gone exceedingly well this weekend. Both the arrows have worked exceptionally well over this circuit, and they seem to be getting their act together, as we say.
Look at the lead opened up by Michael Schumacher. The concern in the pit lane was that Schumacher would run off and hide if he were allowed to. Jean Alesi crossing the start-finish line, several hundred yards behind already. This is Gerhard Berger's Ferrari.
But of course, on that first lap, Schumacher had such a break, and in fact got like 6 or 7 second lead on that very first lap due to that incident.
There you see Gerhard Berger fighting the bumps in the road on the run down to Mirabeau. The right front wheel comes right off the ground in that corner, followed by the left here at the hairpin. The running order is Schumacher, Berger, Alesi, Fittipaldi, Brundle, and Blundell in the top 6 positions, followed by Yukio Katayama, Michele Alboreto, Eric Tomas, and Andrea De Cesaris rounding out the top 10. We'll be back with more live from Monaco. Back live in Monte-Carlo, Monaco, riding along with Jean Alesi back in the Ferrari after missing 2 races following a heavy testing crash through the first turns around the swimming pool, La Piscine.
You can see the kickback he's getting to that steering. I mean, it's really, really very hard for these guys. And I was talking to some of the drivers earlier. They're finding it very hard, the kickback, and they are really rather looking forward to these new modifications to the rules to make the steering somewhat lighter.
Now we switch to Gerhard Berger running in second place, and you can see the gap that he has over his teammate. There comes Alesi just into view, but Michael Schumacher has checked out. Here he is down at the Mirabeau corner already.
He's the only guy out there that's happy about the situation right now. I think the public would like to have it closer, so would the rest of the field. But it's still a very long race, a long way to go, and it's great to see the Ferraris looking strong, albeit 7 or 8 seconds behind.
Through the Virage du Poitiers, the Poitiers turn into the world-famous tunnel underneath the Loews Hotel, and then flashing out into the sunshine alongside the harbor. Our pictures coming to us from Tele Monte-Carlo. I apologize, we lost our feed just before going to commercial break. See Michael Schumacher coming out of the tunnel at about 171 miles an hour. Very fast entry here at the swimming pool.
Yeah, the entry to the swimming pool seems much quicker than it looks when you look at it when we walked around it earlier, Bob. And of course now he's streaming up to the Rascasse, which is quite a tricky little corner. Of course now we're back in with the in-car camera with Alesi, so we've got to change our tact here. He's being hotly pursued by young Christian.
Being caught up by Christian Fittipaldi for 3rd place.
Right with him, he's giving him no room at all. Look at it, right up behind him. The Ferraris were complaining about traction during warm-up this morning, so I guess we're seeing a bit of that now. And of course, right behind Christian, you will be noticing there's Martin Brundle, who went so well on Thursday in qualifying, had an engine problem yesterday and wasn't happy in the afternoon. He actually bent some of the rear suspension and of course didn't really get going to a warm-up this morning. So it's great to see Martin, who always goes well at Monaco, right up there.
Past the Hotel de Paris. This is Casino Square, the casino in the background. You got a quick glimpse. Then once more down, sweeping by the tip-top bar to the Hotel Mirabeau, for which the corner is named. And then hard downhill to the Loews hairpin.
Very interesting to see Christian right there. He's obviously going to be thinking, just how am I going to get by this Ferrari and where? Because this is not a circuit for the faint-hearted, and he's going to have a mighty job picking the spot to go by, and I don't relish the thought of where you might do it in these cars, because the braking is so severe on these cars. They stop so quickly that there is no area to overtake.
Flashing through the chicane and closing up. Now you see Mark Blundell beginning to close up on Brundle. So very shortly we expect to have the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th place cars all nose to tail.
Yes, everybody's starting to feel the confidence coming in. There was that incident, as you know, on the first turn, and of course it split the field up a bit. Now the guys are getting to grips with it, and all the emotion of the last few weeks, I think, is gone now as they're purely concentrating on getting their cars up the front. You can see young Christian there working over the back of Alesi, and he's going to have his work cut out. But of course the Ferraris, we all know, has a tremendous amount of power, and in both practice and qualifying we've seen the Ferraris very, very fast in a straight line, some 7 or 8, 10 mile an hour faster than anything else.
Michael Schumacher now leads the race as you see Mika Hakkinen walking back in after his collision with Damon Hill that took both out of the race at the very first corner. Michael Schumacher now leads by 10.7 seconds, and he is lapping 1.5 seconds faster than the 2nd place man Gerhard Berger. This battle, Jean Alesi and Christian Fittipaldi, goes on 7 seconds behind the 2nd place Ferrari of Berger.
A very quiet, sad-looking Hakkinen there. It's a great pity because he's looked so good all weekend, and to me he's the young pretender. He's on the way to the top.
The Peugeot team in the McLaren is coming on strong, but they definitely need miles in that car. They've been felled by mechanical woes, overheating, hydraulic problems in the differential. They were hoping to get lots of laps here at Monaco and finish the race. Fortunately, it will not happen for Hakkinen.
You'll notice the way that the Ferrari had pulled away from Fittipaldi out of the tunnel. The sheer power of that car is awesome. But of course there's the young lad right up behind him as they come to the turns, and it makes you wonder about the handling of the Ferrari. Here he's right up there under braking behind the Ferrari. It's wonderful to see the arrows going so well. Let me tell you, this circuit looks a lot different when you're driving around than it does to follow it from a TV camera.
Cars sliding onto the front stretch. As you may know, traction control, electronic control of the engine to get maximum traction to the wheels is illegal in Formula 1 in 1994. And if we had any doubt that it was on either the Benetton or the McLaren, we were disabused of that notion in qualifying. Martin Brundle, Mika Hakkinen, Michael Schumacher, J.J. Leto lighting up the rear tires in that run-up to the start-finish straightaway like a drag racer doing a burnout.
It was wonderful. I'm sure we'll see some of it during the race today. The guys get a little bit sideways out of the corners and they just smoke the tires, and it's great to see somebody really putting some hard effort into it. Of course, where the lads have a bit of understeer or push, it doesn't happen quite so often, but certainly with these fellows that got their cars tied it up, and they really were working them very, very well. Martin Brundle again is starting to pull right up there, and I think he'll be offering quite a bit of attack soon. Won't be long.
Once more, down by the harbor side, Jean Alesi, his mirrors full of Christian Fittipaldi and Martin Brundle. We'll be back for more live coverage of the Grand Prix of Monaco. At the top of the hill above the harbor at Monaco lies the village of Old Monaco, where the town was originally founded back before the first millennium. That is where Prince Renier resides with his family, Prince Albert, who was gracious enough to receive us for an interview this weekend, along with his daughters, Princesses Stephanie and Caroline. All built on the ruins of a medieval fortress, and the history of this tiny principality is absolutely fascinating. But we've got a great motor race going on. A tremendous dice right here involving the Benetton of J.J. Leto. That is Andre de Cesaris, Eric Comas, Johnny Herbert, Rubens Barrichello, Olivier Beretta, J.J. Leto, all running nose to tail.
And one of them has a camera on the hood of his car, so I wonder which one that is. It'll be interesting to see.
This is 9th through 15th. The nose-mounted camera without any car in the picture is Olivier Beretta's Larousse. Right now you're riding with race leader Michael Schumacher, who is 13 seconds up the road as we work lap number 10 of 79 scheduled.
Yes, he's having a very nice ride right out front. He just clocked in a 1:21, 2 seconds quicker than he did the last lap. So he's just pulling it out when he needs to. I mean, 21 is a very, very quick time indeed.
He sat on the pole for this race, the first German to sit on the pole at Monaco since Manfred von Brauchitsch in a Mercedes back in 1937. And Manfred, believe it or not, is still alive, living in Germany. And there have been some great German racers since that time. So for Michael Schumacher to be on the pole here at Monaco for the first time since 1937 is really an achievement.
Oh, it really is. He's so calm and cool about the whole process of this racing. He just seemed to come in during practice and qualifying, adjust the car a little bit, go out, do a quicker time, come in, do a little bit more, and out he went. They've had basically no problems whatsoever as far as we can tell, and it's been a mystery to all of us as why J.J. Leto hasn't been anywhere near him. He's been 3 to 4 seconds off the pace the whole time. I'm sure he must be wondering himself. As you can see, his lap times even now 1:27 as opposed to a 1:22 of Schumacher, but obviously there he's in a bit of a procession, or a group. I wouldn't say a procession. He's in a group of other guys all going for it, and of course they're all shutting the door on one another and in fact out fumbling each other, which means they slow each other down. All this allowing Schumacher to pull away even more.
Get a graphic look at the enormous time interval. This is the third place car of Jean Alesi. Gerhard Berger races in between he and the race leader Michael Schumacher. One of the great challenges of racing here is the same one we face as television broadcasters. Everything is so cramped. It's so difficult to get around.
Really interesting to note. Oh, we've lost the shot now. How close to the guardrail these gentlemen get. Here we are. They're having a bit of a go here, passing a tail ender.
That is Michael Schumacher going around the Pacific of Bertrand Gachot. Spare a thought for the Pacific team. 2 weeks ago, following the Grand Prix of San Marino, on the way home, their transporter caught fire. The driver and his assistant were able to get the cars and some important parts out of the truck, but the truck basically burned to the ground. It is a new team in Formula 1 operating on a very modest budget, and the last thing they needed was to see their wheels go up in smoke.
Yeah, they've had a pretty tough weekend here. They've missed a lot of laps out through the whole weekend, and in fact, I think one of the Belmondo didn't even show up this morning for a warm-up. A lot of problems. Meanwhile, Schumacher just streams away from the whole field. Pulls away every lap from Berger.
We saw Mika Hakkinen go out at the first corner. He's standing by now with Eddie Irvine.
Mika, after a great qualifying lap, what happened at the first corner? I have to say this was really unfortunate Grand Prix for me. I only managed to get in a first corner. When the green light came on, I had a reasonable start. I wouldn't say I had a good start, but a reasonable start. I followed the Schumacher in the first corner, and just under braking, I feel somebody hitting me back very hard, and then when somebody hits you on the back, your back rear tires comes in the air, and I hit on a barrier, and I stopped, and I was really angry, of course, mostly because whoever hit my back, was it Berger or somebody else, I have to say it was very, very stupid.
Anyway, great job in qualifying and best of luck in Barcelona.
As you could tell, Mika Hakkinen, not a man to mince words. I don't think I heard him mention that it was Damon Hill that he came together with, but it looked to me like there was a lot of blame to go around in that collision.
He obviously doesn't know yet, but someone is sure to tell him very soon, and he's going to have a few words to say, because to my way of thinking, Damon seemed to ease across just a little bit on him. It's a bit unfair.
And you also got some idea of the noise level in the pit area over Eddie Irvine's microphone. It is incredible, the sound level here in Monaco, which has a natural bowl effect and holds this sound in as it ratchets around off of the high-rise apartment buildings. This is Gerhard Berger getting out so close to those barriers at every corner.
Yes, you just do not want to touch them. Just a little glance is enough to disconcert you. Hakkinen did it in qualifying, and it just threw him from probably doing an even quicker lap than he had done already. You've got to keep off the walls, off the tire walls, the guardrails. There's no area for error here whatsoever. Not like some circuits where you can, if you have to drift a little bit up onto the exit curve. There are no exit curves at Monaco.
As you can see, firemen, course workers, and spectators right down at trackside as the cars go flashing by at as much as 170 miles an hour in places. It's all a part of the spectacle of Monaco. There you see the world feed graphics providing the running order. Over the top and into Casino Square, past the Hotel de Paris with its world-renowned Café Américain, and down the hill to a place like you and I might go, the Tip Tops. Leads Gerhard Berger's Ferrari by 16.2 seconds. Jean Alesi another 13 seconds back. Then Christian Fittipaldi, Martin Brundle, Mark Blundell, Ukio Katayama, Michele Alboreto, Andrea De Cesaris, and Eric Komas, your top 10. Through the chicane and on around the harbor. There is Christian Fittipaldi. There is Brundle.
I would say that Brundle is actually catching young Fittipaldi up right now. He's got the bit between his teeth, and a lot is resting on Martin's shoulders, actually, as he goes to this. They want a good result here, and now with Hakkinen out, it's really up to Martin to pull something out of the bag, and I think he can do a very good job.
That is the 6th place Tyrrell of Mark Blundell of Great Britain, the 6th and final points-paying position.
But he's got a long way. He's fallen back a reasonable amount, hasn't he? Got a bit of empty road in front of him.
Yep, he follows Brundle by 4.5 seconds, roughly.
That's a lot around Monte-Carlo because you can't see 4 seconds in front of you, so he's probably losing a bit of touch, which is not a nice thing to do. You need to see the driver in front so you can actually work away at it.
Now we run along with Michael Schumacher, who is in among the back markers, and as you can see, there's a race going on just ahead of him. That's Rubens Barrichello and Olivier Beretta, I believe, running in 12th and 13th spots as the race leader seeks a way through. They go up through the gearbox, engines revving over 13,000 RPM, and then this sweeping left-hander into Casino Square. Spectacular stuff.
This is quite an interesting battle here we've got going on. It's Barrichello, Beretta, and Leto having a pretty close battle there, and you can see Leto was really trying to make a move as best he could on Beretta, but not easy to do. I'm surprised that Beretta's so far up, actually. He's running exceptionally well.
And there is the blue Ligier of Olivier Panis. It was announced this weekend that the Ligier team will be bought by the Benetton team. It was announced yesterday, and of course the prize in that transaction is the Renault engine that the Ligier team uses. Now pit stops, as you see Damon Hill walking in. Pit stops very much a part of the strategy of this Grand Prix. For more on that, let's hear from Eddie Irvine.
Yeah, I've just learned that finally race 1 maybe
Ferraris were making 2 pit stops in this race. Talking to a few of the other teams, they were saying one was probably what they were going to do because of the new regulations where the cars got to be so slow in the pit lane. They reckoned with 2 pit stops they'd lose just too much time and they wouldn't be able to make it up. So we'll see what actually happens.
All right, thank you, Eddie. You definitely don't want to give up track position here at Monaco if you can help it. There's Michael Schumacher still trotting along behind. I believe that's Comas.
They're coming down past the tip top, and as you can see, we have Barrichello and Barrichello and Beretta fumbling down their way down there, and they seem to have dropped Leto, haven't they? They seem to have slipped right back.
There he is, just coming down the hill now. There he is. You're riding along with J.J. Leto, who, as Derek mentioned, has struggled this weekend. At Imola, he was just a tiny fraction of a second behind his teammate Schumacher, who eventually went on and won that race. Here he's been as much as 3 or 4 seconds down.
Yeah, they're completely mystified. They say that, in fact, he likes a slightly different setup on his car to Schumacher, but I'm afraid we find that a little bit hard to believe that he could be 4 seconds off just due to setup. But again, Leto is such a star driver, I can't understand his mentality. Here he is, in fact, about to be lapped by his teammate just after 17 laps. Now that is pretty galling for somebody of Leto's class. He's going to let him by, yes, as easy as you like, thank you, and off he goes. There has to be a lot of discipline on this circuit, and so far we've seen some very good driving, and where the overtaking has taken place, it's been very controlled, because all the drivers know the likelihood of an incident if they do go too wide or get pushed off. There's nowhere to go.
I would imagine the leader will find out that the cars just ahead of him now are not going to be as easy to pass as his teammate.
It could well be that they think it's Leto coming up on them, because they're so busy with blue flags and fumbling each other that when they see that Benetton, they're going to say, hello, we've got Leto up behind us, and so they won't let him go by. But the marshals and corner workers are very good here. Oh, this is an interesting, because they're all 3 trying to overtake a 10.
Riding on board with Michael Schumacher, following the LaRousse. That was one of the Pacific cars. That's Paul Belmondo they got by, the silver Pacific Ilmor.
Michael Schumacher's got to be very disciplined over this as well, because he mustn't let it go to his head. But he is nearly 16 seconds ahead at the moment. He can afford to just take a bit of a breather and back off and pick the right spot to go by. He's got the race in his own hands at the moment. A silly move, as we've seen in many Grand Prix in the past, can be fateful as far as finishing the race in a good position. Here we are coming through by the swimming pool. Very tricky little corner, and there's a nasty curve on the right there, and we saw a wonderful qualifying lap from Häkkinen yesterday when he was actually all 4 wheels on top of all 2 inside wheels on top of the curb, kissing the barrier. It was wonderful to watch. Now Michael's still going to have a job to get by up here, but I hope they just pull over and let him go by, but he hasn't really got the power to get by them. It's astonishing.
Olivier Beretta just ahead of him. Ahead of Beretta is Ruben Barrichello, coming back from his big crash at Imola, which caused him to sit out the race.
You'll notice now that Schumacher has been there for 1 complete lap behind these guys. Here he goes. Oh, see, he's being held up, you see. The man in front of him, Beretta, does not realize that is Schumacher. He thinks it's Leto, so he's going to do all he can to stop him.
I think he was definitely blocking him, and I think you said the reason earlier, Derek. He thinks that the man behind him is Leto and not the race leader.
Absolutely. I don't know how you're going to tell him. I expect Schumacher's shouting through his headset, go up to the team and tell them that I'm the one behind. And this is what we've done. I've known this happen over the years. I hope he doesn't do anything stupid here. Oh, nice move. Lovely move. Lovely move.
And that leaves 12 cars on the lead lap, being led by Michael Schumacher. We'll be back with more. You could spend tens of thousands of dollars for a small apartment here in Monte-Carlo, or you could just go out and sit on the cliff. Prince Albert told us about his earliest memories of racing here in Monaco.
The first Grand Prix I actually saw as being close to the track was, I think, 1963. So I was all of 5 years old then. And then I remember, I don't remember much from that race, but I do remember the race 2 years later, I think, when Graham Hill won, because I saw most of the race right there with my parents, and it was, I don't know, it really impressed me, the cars, the smells,
Absolutely.
the whole atmosphere.
Serene Highness, Prince Albert of Monaco. There is Martin Brundle making the first major pit stop of the day with the McLaren team.
Keep that speed down. Having that speed trap up there, they can only do 50 miles an hour. We had somebody booked yesterday, Vedralami, got fined $5,000 for speeding, so it's a little bit cheaper on the highways in the States.
Now there have been warning lights installed on the racetrack, up track from the pit out, so that oncoming drivers know that someone is exiting the pits. Another safety aspect attended to here in Monaco. But the problem right now is that Martin Brundle is obviously not up to speed, and that Jordan behind him has to be careful he doesn't overtake too quickly.
Yeah, Martin isn't at all keen on having another car in front of him to overtake, because obviously he's running quite well. So he pulled out and really blocked the road in front of him.
Excuse me, I said it was a Jordan. Wouldn't you know it, it was actually one of the Minardis. But they do look an awful lot alike.
They do. The colours, again, make it difficult to decide or decipher who they are. The one thing I can tell you is what a Ferrari is.
Pulling about 2.5 Gs on that sharp right-hander through Casino Square. There's Ukio Katayama in the Tyrrell. Katayama has been a revelation thus far this year. Everybody assumed Mark Blundell would just blow him off, but he has driven very, very well, occasionally out-qualifying Blundell, and their Yamaha engine is coming on as well.
Yes, it's doing very, very well indeed. And Jack Brabham, the ex-world champion, was having a chat with us the other day, and we said, well, isn't the engine going well now? He said, as a matter of fact, he said, the engine's always gone well. They're just getting the chassis together. And of course, they got Harvey Postlethwaite there doing that for them, who of course, was with Ferrari for some years. And it's great to see Harvey back there with the British team, and I'm sure he's very happy working in England again.
Let's get more on that McLaren pit stop now from Eddie Jordan.
Yeah, Martin Brundle came in, took tyres on, but didn't take any fuel on board, so I just assumed it was an unscheduled stop. They were only planning on doing one. Martin must have got a puncture or something like this. It's the only thing I can explain it with.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Eddie Irvine. Eddie Jordan owns the car. Eddie Irvine drives it. Or certainly will at our next stop on the Formula 1 World Tour, which will be Barcelona, Spain, in just 2 weeks' time. There is race leader Michael Schumacher working lap number 24 of 78, and he is 15 seconds up the road from the second place car of Gerhard Berger. Now the Benetton team is preparing for a pit stop. Down the hill comes Michael Schumacher, past the intersection with the Boulevard de l'Arvoto, through the Poitiers turn onto Princess Grace Boulevard and through the tunnel.
Your French is wonderful. Do you know that?
Thank you. Pronunciation is the job skill of the 90s, after all. Michael Schumacher has accomplished something extraordinary here. The late Ayrton Senna was acknowledged as perhaps the qualifying master in the entire history of Formula 1. But during the second day of qualifying, there were problems on Schumacher's car. He kept it in the pits for a short while, went out, and in 3 laps went to the top of the charts, and he is pulling in now. He then came out and knocked more than a second off that time. He has qualified faster than Ayrton Senna ever drove around the Principality, and now he comes in for service. See the fuel going in from the right.
Fairly obviously, I would say, he only started with a light amount of fuel.
And just behind him, looks like Gerhard Berger brings in the Ferrari.
They obviously started with a light load as well.
You can see just how narrow the pit lane here is at Monaco. Those may look like garages to the right. They're actually a little more than closets. In French, the equivalent word is stands. They're only about 8 to 10 feet deep.
Stand is the operative word, because all you can do is stand.
Gerhard Berger back in action. The running order right now is Schumacher, Alesi, Fittipaldi, and Berger, as you saw the race leader going around David Brabham's beautiful purple Simtek Ford.
Alboretto's doing very well. He's up there in 7th place, doing a very nice job. Of course, he's yet to stop for tyres and fuel, but he's up there on his own merit at the moment.
Here's a look at the running order. from the World Graphics. Down through the chicane. This is where Carl Wendlinger suffered his crash. An update on Wendlinger, by the way. The doctors say that because he has made it through the first 48 hours following his cerebral contusion, or brain swelling, literally, his chances of survival are looking better and better. And the doctors say they are very optimistic, but they do not know anything about what Carl Wendlinger's capacities will be once he is brought out of his coma. They are keeping him in a coma in order to keep him immobile and to help promote the healing process. But it will be weeks and weeks, I would gather, before we will know more about whether Carl Wendlinger will ever drive again. There is David Brabham taking the Simtek up the hill with a Ferrari just behind. We'll take a quick pit stop and return live to the streets of Monte-Carlo. Stay with us. Since prehistoric times. Of course, we don't know what it was called then. This weekend, all the pleasure revolves around the Grand Prix. For the 52nd year, there are souvenirs on every street corner, and much of it has to do, of course, with the late Ayrton Senna. Much of the souvenir sales this weekend is being donated to the Princess Grace Foundation in memory of the great world champion. You are riding on board with Jean Alesi in the Ferrari in second place, just 6 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher. Alesi has not yet pitted. 15 cars now on the lead lap as the pit stops shuffle the order here. You're watching live the Grand Prix of Monaco.
You might like to note that, in fact, when you see his hands moving like that, he's not trying to turn the wheel, he's trying to control it. He's trying to stop the kickback, which must be knocking heck out of his thumbs and his wrists. He's not going in this lap, he's continuing on round. Interesting bit of strategy by Ferrari there. I don't quite understand it, but maybe they think maybe they'll try and run one car a little longer than the other.
Jean Alesi holds his hands in an interesting position. It's not the classic 9 and 3 if the wheel were a clock face. Very, very high in the cockpit.
Yes, I can't see if it's the spoke on that moment where he's got his thumbs over. He should be on top of the spoke because you just have so much more grip over the control of the front wheels. I think they probably are, but the wheel is so small that you can't see just what he's resting his thumbs on. Look at that lock. Look at that lock.
Notice his eyes in the side view mirror. Now here's a battle down in the chicane. That is Eric Comas. Behind him is that Johnny Herbert's Lotus. It is Rubens Barrichello is in there. This is all for position. Comas runs 10th. The cars behind him are Herbert in 11th, Barrichello in 12th, Beretta in 13th, and J.J. Leto in the Benetton 14th. We expect J.J. Leto to peel off for the pits. Eddie Irvine will be waiting there for him. Round Rescas. That restaurant is fully staffed and functional this weekend. Here comes J.J. Leto into the pits. Take it away, Eddie. I could. There you see him making his way through the second chicane, the pit exit chicane, and back onto the racetrack. Jirka Yarveleto, placed in the Benetton team by his manager, the former world champion Keke Rosberg, who also manages the race leader Michael Schumacher.
Now, Leto must be wondering just what is happening this weekend. I'm sure he hasn't quite fathomed it out, and when you get that mental block or that problem that he's obviously having, it's a long way back. Not easy for him.
Excuse me, apologies. Keke Rosberg does not manage Michael Schumacher. Billy Weber does. It's Mika Hakkinen that I'm thinking of that Keke Rosberg also manages. But he does have two of the young studs in Formula 1, no question about it.
And we all make mistakes.
Don't we ever?
A lot of them haven't actually pitted yet. Fittipaldi hasn't, Alesi hasn't, and Blundell hasn't, or Alboreto and De Cesaris. So it's going to be a lot of activity yet to come.
Eddie Irvine has more on J.J. Leto.
Yeah, I was talking to JJ before the race, and he's having massive problems with his neck. I actually noticed he had a neck brace on, and also he was getting his helmet strapped to his shoulders on both sides. So he's obviously still suffering from his very weak muscles in his neck. And he says also that the bumps here are just causing him great problems. He just can't focus on the corners because his head's rolling around so much. So I seen them pulling the straps to hold his helmet as tight as possible. So he'll be really struggling in this race as it goes on more and more.
I'd like to point out that, of course, if your neck starts to go, your head becomes very, very heavy. And these guys are pulling 3.5 G around the corners. And if you imagine that your head with the helmet on weighs 20-odd pounds, you're pulling 3G, that's 60-odd pounds that your head is being tossed around on your shoulders. And if you have a weakness in your neck, boy, you're going to get tired very, very quickly. And it makes you feel sick and all sorts of things. It's a very unpleasant feeling, believe me.
You watched that Tyrrell pit stop. Now you are watching the battle as Gerhard Berger closes up on Christian Fittipaldi. This is for third place. Fittipaldi is in third, Berger fourth after his pit stop. I remember Price Cobb driving in the IMSA GTP cars at Lime Rock several years ago. He got out of the car, and our Marty Reed, doing the broadcast with me, went up to him and said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I can't hold my head up." Marty said, "How did you hurt it?" He said, "I'm not hurt. I just can't hold my head up anymore."
Now, I don't think anybody, that listens or watches realizes just the physical effort that goes into driving these cars. Talking to several of the drivers this weekend, they just say it's really so physical around here. You wouldn't believe it, of course, because you say, yeah, but the average speed's only in the 90-mile-an-hour, and they're only doing 170 miles an hour. But in fact, it's all corners, and when it isn't corners, it's bumps. And when it's not bumps, you've got contours or canvas in the corner, and it's very, very difficult.
The running order is Schumacher, Alesi, Fittipaldi, Berger, the battle you're watching right now through Casino Square. Then Mark Blundell, Martin Brundle in the McLaren, Michele Alboreto, Andre De Cesaris, and Eric Comas in ninth. The last car on the lead lap at this point. Johnny Herbert is 10th, followed by Olivier Beretta, Olivier Panis, Eric Bernard, J.J. Leto, David Brabham, Ukio Katayama, Pedro Lamy, Bertrand Gachot, Rubens Barrichello, and Paul Belmondo. 20 of the 24 cars that started this race are still in it. Flashing out of the tunnel into the sunshine. No doubt the drivers do a little blinking, but you can't do much because you're doing about 170 miles an hour. We'll be back with more live from Monaco. We are back live in Monte-Carlo, Monaco, and there is a look at the enormous Jumbotron, or whatever kind of screen it is, that gives fans all around this 2-mile racetrack a look at what's going on in the pit area as well as on the track itself. The LaRousse team making a pit stop in this incredibly jammed pit area, and just ahead you see the Jordan team. They're working on Rubens Barrichello's car. We'll try to get Eddie Irvine down there and see if we can find out what's happening. That was Olivier Beretta bringing the LaRousse back out. Ferrari down in the low chicane. Now here comes the third place car of Christian Fittipaldi with Gerhard Berger's Ferrari just behind him. Jean Alesi is just ahead of him. Let's get back to Eddie Irvine.
Again, Barrichello's race is run. They tried to, the engine stopped as he came in for a pit stop, couldn't restart it, and now they've decided to push the car out of the way for give De Cesaris some room when he comes in. But Barrichello's race is over.
Tough bake for Rubens Barrichello. Right now, the battle is for third place. Fittipaldi desperately trying to hold off Gerhard Berger.
It's very interesting, actually, to see that Fittipaldi is doing a #1 job here at keeping ahead of Berger. Berger, of course, has stopped for fuel, and in front of him, Fittipaldi has not stopped for fuel, and as far as I'm aware, nor has Alesi.
These are two drivers particularly affected by the death of Ayrton Senna. He was a close friend to both men. Christian Fittipaldi has come here, and it seems to me at least, Derek, he is almost angry that such a thing could happen to a man like Senna. He seems absolutely energized as a racing driver, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens to him. Meanwhile, Gerhard Berger, the gay young blade of Formula-1 over the last few years, the man who met all the girls and enjoyed the party life into the late night, has suddenly produced all sorts of leadership. He is desperate to make sure that Ayrton Senna is not forgotten, as you watch Mark Blundell pitting the Tyrrell, and he wants to lead the newly revitalized Grand Prix Drivers Association. In fact, Berger, Fittipaldi, and Schumacher are the first three active drivers. The organization will be chaired by Niki Lauda.
It's very interesting that they're bringing the Grand Prix Drivers Association back in again. It's vital, I think, for the future of motorsport. In my opinion, motorsport has to be entertainment. It is entertainment. And unless everybody's pitching in with their corner, then it's not going to work forever. It's got to crumble. And after the incidents the last couple of weeks, we're now finding that the drivers are getting together and they're talking about safety. And it takes, unfortunately, a tragedy to unite everybody to try and improve safety things for the future. And I think we'll see a lot of improvement The thing is getting the drivers all activated to do it, not just a small group of them.
Eddie Irvine is standing by with Rubens Barrichello. As you see, Jean Alesi bringing the Ferrari pit stop. We'll hold Eddie for just a moment. Jean Alesi with the visor up.
And Christian Fittipaldi came in behind him.
They're not going for the tires. It's a long stop. They put fuel in Alesi's car.
And of course, he daren't accelerate too hard. Mind you, there's not very far to go. And there's Fittipaldi leading right behind him. Very close gap.
So that was Christian Fittipaldi's opportunity to pass Jean Alesi in the pits, but he couldn't get it done. They come back on the racetrack. The running order: Schumacher, Berger, Brundle, Alesi, Fittipaldi, Alboreto, De Cesaris, and Mark Blundell, the only unlapped cars. Now, Blundell may have gone a lap down following his pit stop. We'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, let's get back down to Eddie Irvine.
Yeah, and with Ruben Barrichello here in the pits. Ruben, how was it going up until the problem?
Well, I was stuck in the traffic, so I decided to come earlier to change the tires. And then when I came in, the engine just died, as the same as Ida. So I don't know what's the problem.
Anyway, tough luck.
All right,
Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Eddie. We saw that replay of David Brabham bearing down on Jean Alesi and Christian Fittipaldi as they exited the pits. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Of course, I don't know if we pointed out before, but there are, in fact, two arrows, very bright, flashing yellow arrows, right over the top of the pit exit. So cars coming down the straight past the pits can be told or warned when there's somebody coming out. And obviously, David knew very well that a car was coming out in front of him. And as you appreciate, there's no way that Alesi wanted, or should I say anybody wanted, to let Brabham get in front of at that point, because they were in a much higher position on the classement. That's a good bit of French.
John Alesi brings his Ferrari out of the start-finish straightaway, up through the gearbox, up over 160 miles an hour. He now has Fittipaldi right there behind him. David Brabham up ahead doing a good job. He is up into 14th spot for the young Simtech team that was so shaken by the death of Roland Ratzenberger. There is a special decal on the top of the airbox in red and white, the colors of Austria. You may be able to make out as David Brabham comes through your screen. It says for Roland, who was a resident of Monaco, as we mentioned earlier.
It must be so hard for a young team like theirs to have to contend with a tragedy like this so soon in their sort of racing career. It's very, very hard for everybody, including the drivers. There's not really anybody there of great experience and can really give them confidence to carry on. But as David said to us earlier, the car is improving every second they go out. They make major changes. It makes major improvements. They're a long way from doing the fine-tuning yet.
There is Eric Bernard, who has parked the Ligier down at the chicane area. I don't know if he spun it there. He certainly pointed in the wrong direction.
He looks like he's got a flat spot on his tire right there on the rear right. So Eric did go in backwards.
There's another look at it. You had a quick look at the Minardi's in the pit area. Michele Alboreto going out, Pierluigi Martini going in as Bernard executes his 180 and parks the Ligier. Been a tough year for that team.
Yeah, they haven't had a good weekend here at all. Oh no, another pit stop for the other Ligier, no doubt.
That is Olivier Panis, the former Formula 3000 champion, coming to the exit.
And he's got a clear exit. I don't know if you knew, Bob, but I'm intrigued to know what temperature they pump these tires up. They get these tires up to.
This is Andrea De Cesaris, as you see Eric Bernard walking in.
That walk back must seem so long when you've made an error like that, and it seems so unnecessary because he didn't do it any other lap. He just did it that one and he got called out. But of course these young drivers are all driving on such a limit.
Here's a look at the list of all-time starts in Grand Prix competition. Ricardo Patrese and Nelson Piquet, the only men over 200, they are now out. Andrea De Cesaris starts his 199th race today, tying him with Alain Prost for third all-time. The difference, of course, is that Alain Prost won 51 of those starts, while Andrea De Cesaris is the record holder for experience without ever winning a race. Michele Alboreto with 182, and Nigel Mansell, of course, is now in Indy cars. Michele may hit 200 starts quite soon, and that was once considered an almost unapproachable goal. Saw Martin Brundle pass.
Yeah.
That was David Brabham.
He's obviously doing very well. In fact, Martin's right up there in the third place, which I'm sure is just where he wanted to be, ahead of Alesi. He's about, 11 seconds ahead of Alesi? Would that be? No, he's not. He's 8 seconds ahead of Alesi. Martin's a very cool customer. He drives very immaculately, and that's, of course, what you have to do around Monaco, should I say.
Please do.
Sorry,
That's what I'm calling.
I'm sorry.
Another view from high above the harbor. A Ferrari at Monaco. It doesn't get much better than that at the grandest Grand Prix of them all. We'll be back in just a moment. On a very steep hill, a beautiful spring day in Monte-Carlo, a huge crowd has gathered for the 52nd running of the Grand Prix of Monaco. There you see Ukio Katayama climbing from his Tyrrell. His Yamaha V10 engine just let go in a big way on the front straightaway. The Minardi of Pierluigi Martini is just ahead, and the footwork of Gianni Morbidelli that went out in the crash at the very first corner of this race. We are down to 17 cars unofficially of the 24 starters still in the race. That man, Michael Schumacher, leads by 28.2 seconds over the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, with Martin Brundle's McLaren now 9 seconds behind Berger in third spot, followed by Jean Alesi, another 24 seconds back, and Christian Fittipaldi still right there in the footwork car, less than half a second behind Jean Alesi. Telemetry provided by the people at Ford Electronics. You see the accelerator position, the green line on the bottom, tours per minute, crankshaft speed, or tachometer if you like, revolutions per minute in English. Inside the green circle, the gear that Michael Schumacher is in as he flashes up the hill, never lifting on the way up, and of course the speed in kilometer per hour.
Exactly. Do you want to know? It was 100 odd miles an hour to the top of the hill. Just about 110 miles an hour as he came up that braking area.
You raced in the famous Formula 3 race here at Monaco, Derek Bell. What's it like to come here and compete in front of these enormous crowds on one of the best-known circuits in the world?
Well, Bob, they never used to watch our race much because they held ours at 6 o'clock on the Saturday morning. But, no, it is wonderful. I mean, all the Formula 3 drivers of the world wanted to race here, and I'm sure there's a few American drivers that have raced at Monaco during the Formula 3 era, the very famous Formula 3 earlier era before it became dominated by Europeans. But it was a great circuit to race on. Of course, there's quite a lot of changes since we raced here. There's a lot more corners, and in those days it was somewhat faster.
See the wheels spinning on Eric Comas's LaRousse in the pits.
There shouldn't be a lack of... there is. They've got through to each other about how not putting the brakes on, fella.
You notice those special sunglasses being worn by Comas. I think this might be a replay, or is that another car? Ooh, oil on the road. Michael Schumacher. Now this is Mark Blundell. He loses his Yamaha.
Yeah, his engine's really gone. He's belching stuff out, oil or water up behind him, and of course it must have made a wild moment for Schumacher there, trying to control the car, because I'm sure he couldn't see too much, let alone know where the oil was. So he did pretty well to get through that.
We'll see if we can take another look at that from inside Michael Schumacher's car. He will almost get collected here. Now you see the plume of smoke up around the corner as he goes around a slower car, and there you can see the oil right on the road.
And of course Schumacher would have a certain amount of that on his visor. As you can see, he got a fair old slide on the front there as he turned in, and only just missed the guardrail. I'm sure his heart missed a beat there, and I bet he hadn't got his foot flat on the floor all the way up the hill that time. This is very interesting. Here we have Martin Brundle about to overtake the Ferrari of Berger, and he has overtaken. Would you say it's Berger? I can't see it. Oh, there it is. It's Alesi. So they must be lapping him. Alesi must be having a problem. Alesi. No.
See as they make their way down to Poitiers. Martin Brundle, as you mentioned, always drives well here.
Well, I don't think he's overtaken Berger, although he was 9 seconds behind on the last lap. So Berger must have a problem if it is him, and Alesi is behind him.
I'm going to hold fire. I'm not sure that's not Gerhard Berger, although we can't get a close look at it right now. That was the car Brundle was following.
Yeah, there's Berger. That was Berger shown in that last shot.
So Gerhard Berger may have a problem.
We'll only know when he goes by the start-finish line, and we see it come up on the classement of the race. There it is.
They've given it to him already. Now there's a pit action in the Lotus pit area.
it would be incredible to see Martin Brundle pull this one off. He did so well on Thursday, as I said earlier, and had some problems yesterday, and he looked very despondent about the whole show. But today he's running like a master. It's wonderful to see. Oh, his Berger did a 1:36 that last lap, so he obviously had a major problem.
1:36. Meanwhile, Martin Brundle did a 1:26. Well ahead of the pace by race leader Michael Schumacher right now. As you see, Pedro Lamy makes his way through Sandoval. Incidentally, the Formula 3 race this year was won by Italian Giancarlo Fisichella. Just thought you wanted to know.
It was a very exciting race. There were three of them coming into the Rascasse on the last lap, and lots of smoke and banging going on and cheering, and obviously he came out in the lead.
Martin Brundle flashing through the tunnel. His wife Liz looks on from the grandstand.
Of course, the Formula 3 race years ago, and I guess it still is that, but certainly up to about 10 years ago, the Formula 3 race was the one for all the Formula 1 team managers to watch, because the stars of tomorrow came through Formula 3, as of course some of them still do.
Martin Brundle, of course, a Formula 3 driver who battled with the late Ayrton Senna. As you watch Bertrand Gachot getting bit attention. We asked Martin about his move to the front-running McLaren team.
I mean, I've come to a team that have used to Prost, Lauda, Senna, and I was terrified, frankly, it would be very difficult to do anything at all on any day that would impress them. But in fact, they're a really down-to-earth, nice bunch of guys.
Well, Martin Brundle, with whom you are now riding, has just lapped in 1:22.8, almost a full second under the pace set by Michael Schumacher, with whom he was a teammate last year. This could get interesting. Stay with us.
If you're looking for a
Plenty of race fans here in Monte-Carlo remember Roland Ratzenberger, 31 years of age, who died in a practice crash 2 weeks ago at the Grand Prix of San Marino. He and Ayrton Senna very much missed here this weekend at Monte-Carlo. Bob Varsha, Derek Bell, and Eddie Irvine with you. There is Jean Alesi running in fourth position, 1 minute and 4 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher. In between, Martin Brundle is pounding around. Gerhard Berger runs in third spot behind Brundle, and then this man, Jean Alesi.
Alesi actually hasn't been that fast all weekend, has he? He's been half a second or a second slower than Berger nearly all the time.
This is Gerhard Berger. Will he head for the pits? No. Crew listening intently to the radios. The drivers and engineers discuss what may be going on. Gerhard Berger was a very strong second place in this race until being run down and passed by Martin Brundle. Michael Schumacher, incidentally, has taken up Martin Brundle's challenge and just ripped off a lap at 1:21.886, just about 3 full seconds off of his qualifying pace. And he has the race in hand right now. There you see the gap from the second place McLaren of Martin Brundle back to Gerhard Berger's Ferrari.
I'm wondering just why Berger did lose so many seconds on that lap. Maybe it was some gear selection problem, but he lost, what, 18 seconds on that one lap, didn't he? Did a 39 or something. Now he's back up to pace. But of course, the other thing too, he may have grazed a guardrail that we didn't see, and it might have taken him time to get his confidence back. If ever there's a man out there that's aware of the safety out there, that's Gerhard Berger.
Both Ferrari drivers opened practice here wearing soft neck braces. You heard Eddie Irvine talk earlier about some of the neckwear being worn in some of the other teams. Ferrari now in its 54th race without a victory. They are looking for a win. Now here's Martin Brundle headed for the pits. Eddie Irvine is there.
Yep, the McLaren guys, they're going to put fuel in, change the tires. Yep, everything's going okay. Actually, Brundle's tightening his belts. He's fiddling with his belts. It must be a bit too loose or a bit too tight. They're away. Not a great stop, but not bad.
We're used to seeing 7-second stops or better from the McLaren team, but my guess here, Derek Bell, is that they're taking extra time to make sure they keep their man out there without calamity.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's a close move as well. No, it's very, very important tonight. I'm glad to see this speed restriction in the pit lane. It's good to see cars coming out sensibly. It's amazing how long it's taken them to get around to having some safety in the places where it really matters. It's terrible that we have to have a tragedy before the governing body take note of it all, or at least really do something about it, take action.
You see the running order after 46 laps as Bertrand Gachot in the Silver Pacific car gets passed by Martin Brundle. I think this is the same pass we saw earlier, and I called it the Simtech. I have to have a word with my spotter after this is over. There goes the Simtech following Gachot, and there goes our picture entirely.
Now we're back in the cockpit with Alesi, I believe. Oh, we were.
We are indeed. Now we're back in the Ferrari pits.
That's
Our
right.
friends from Monte-Carlo must be calling a very interesting race.
They're very close to Ferrari, obviously. You'll notice that, of course, Berger's now 19 seconds ahead of Brundle, because Brundle's in fact had 2 stops. One originally for tyres. We think it might have been a slow puncture or something. And of course, then secondly, just now he went in for tyres and for fuel. So there's quite a gap between them again. And Martin's going to have to work his way through the field. It's all gone a bit quiet back there. We haven't seen too much of Fittipaldi, which is a pity because he was doing so well early on. And I'm sure he isn't really that far behind. In fact, he's only 2 seconds behind Alesi.
We are well past the halfway mark. Let's take a look at our Haviland mid-race recap. The race leader is Michael Schumacher, who has led all of the laps after being given a huge boost at the start when the second-place car of Mika Hakkinen made contact with Damon Hill's Williams. Both of those cars eventually out of the race. Both were contenders for the race victory today. Schumacher then motored away from the field. We have 15 cars remaining in the race. We'll give you a look at those already out of the race, including Mika Hakkinen, who is bitterly disappointed at being knocked out early. In fact, at the very first corner, Saint-Devote.
It's very interesting to notice from the times that unfortunately our listeners or viewers can't see, and that is the fact that, of course, when one of our fast cars, our leading 2 or 3 cars, gets behind traffic, they lose 4 or 5 seconds a lap. And that is one heck of a lot when you've battled away for lap after lap to pick up a tenth at a time, and the next lap you lose 5 seconds and have to start all over again.
We're on board briefly there with Gerhard Berger flashing around Monaco in his Ferrari. Now here's another look at John Alesi, I think trying to caution the driver ahead of him that he would like to get by politely.
Very difficult to do because they're pretty restricted in there and they're fairly busy, and I don't think they get too much time to wave. And I don't think it's going to catch the guy's attention in front because his work is cut up keeping his car on the road. Nobody's out there for a Sunday afternoon drive, I can assure you.
Left of your screen, corner at Lowe's, beautiful gardens outside the casino. This is Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. Will he bring it in? Yes, he does as the crew gets ready. We'll keep it right here, going very slowly, not because there's anything wrong with the car, but because there is a pit lane speed limit instituted for this race, as there will be the rest of the season. They're going to change the nose cone on the car. Recall that at Imola, in addition to the tragic deaths of Ratzenberger and Senna, we also had a pit situation in which a wheel came off Michele Alboretto's car and struck 4 mechanics. Fortunately, none of them were seriously injured, but it was a desperate moment. The Formula 1 authorities immediately slapped 2 chicanes on the pit lane here in Monaco and declared a speed limit.
I didn't notice him being refueled at that point. So he may well have to stop yet again for fuel. And really, these pit stops are what's going to make such a difference to the result of this race.
David Brabham climbs out of the Simtech. There's the Benetton crew. But Brabham and his older brother Jeff, who won 4 IMSA GTP championships, have virtually identical helmets. Now there's Christian Fittipaldi. What a shame. Technical director Alan Jenkins listens in as Fittipaldi explains what happened to his footwork. We're now told that Jean Alesi and David Brabham came together. Alesi is still out there. You saw Brabham retire the car.
But Alesi, of course, came in for the new nose cone. That is why he had to come in. It's unusual to come in and lose time for an aerodynamic.
Our race leader, Michael Schumacher, heads for the Benetton pits.
With a 38-second lead over Gerhard Berger. He's got time on his hands, but he's got to use his head very, very seriously for the rest of this event, just to make sure he doesn't hit any of those barriers or do anything silly. Oh, they're slowing him right down. Do you see that? A lot of people in yellow there.
No sign of the second place car yet.
Dear.
That was
Didn't like that very much. But I think the other driver knew, because the yellow light should have been flashing, or the yellow arrows, so he would have known that Schumacher was coming out of the pits.
So the order now, Michael Schumacher still holds first place, but now by just 12 seconds over the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. May yet have another stop in his future. Martin Brundle runs in third spot, and those three cars are the only ones on the lead lap right now as you take another look at Schumacher's pit exit. Now Schumacher desperate to get around that Ligier.
De Cesaris is right up there in fourth place.
I believe fourth place equals the best performance Andrea De Cesaris has ever had in Grand Prix racing. I recall a couple of years ago, I take that back. Our vast and experienced statistical department reminds me that Andrea De Cesaris was actually third in the U.S. Grand Prix at Phoenix a few seasons ago. I remember when he almost won the Belgian Grand Prix driving for the then very new Jordan racing team.
12 seconds between Schumacher and Berger now. Things are livening up just a little bit. But no doubt Berger will have to come in for another pit stop, whereas Schumacher's just made his.
There's the Gas Restaurant, formerly the site of a gasworks, which gave the corner its name, Gasworks Corner, for many years. Now Gerhard Berger will pit the Ferrari. Yes, he does. Now Martin Brundle will be trying to make up time and see if he can take the position. I'm not sure he'll have a shot, though. Kind of depends on how quickly Gerhard Berger can get into the race legally.
Yeah, Martin was 21 seconds behind Berger at that pit stop, and Berger, he'll be pretty close.
He just went by our announced position. I think Martin Brundle will take it away. Yes, he has. Martin Brundle moves into second place, but Gerhard Berger will be very close behind if he can get the Ferrari back up to speed. There should be a tremendous fight to come. You're watching live the Grand Prix of Monaco, and we'll be back in just a moment. Beautiful, luxurious yachts from around the world. Whether you have a big boat, a small one, or no boat at all, there is something for everyone to enjoy here in Monte-Carlo, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to come and enjoy all of the spectacle and splendor of a Grand Prix weekend. We are live here on ESPN. Race leader Michael Schumacher going for his fourth Grand Prix victory in a row. The Benetton crew welcomes his teammate J.J. Leto of Finland and goes to work. Just a few moments ago, we saw the Ferrari of Jean Alesi come in and get a new nose cone. Just a bit before that, we saw a replay of Alesi shaking his fist at David Brabham's Simtech just ahead. There's more to tell about that story as you watch Leto making his way back out onto the racetrack.
Yeah, I've just been down and looked at Alesi's nose cone. Structurally, there was no damage, just the cosmetic damage to the very tip of the nose cone. But following Roland Ratzenberger's accident, where it was a suspected front wing failure because of an off-track excursion by Ratzenberger on the previous lap, I think Alesi decided to be cautious and just change the nose cone in case there is a failure in his car. And after accidents like Ratzenberger's and Ayrton Senna's, when things do happen like that, the driver has these things in the back of their heads and they come forward, and previous to that you probably would continue on, but now drivers will probably be a bit more cautious under the same sort of circumstances.
All right, thank you, Eddie. And how ironic that Jean Alesi broke that front wing, or at least impacted it, on the back of the Simtech of David Brabham, Roland Ratzenberger's former teammate. Through the Virage de Poitiers, through the tunnel, well lit. As you can see, they have added enormous lighting in this tunnel from the old days when it was just a black hole that the drivers would flash through at 150, 160 miles an hour or more. Far today, the biggest flash has been this man, Michael Schumacher.
He's not put a foot wrong so far. And he's back them the whole weekend in the same fashion. Absolutely masterful the whole weekend.
Around the swimming pool, down the short run, past all the TV trucks crammed together on the end of the key. Then up past the Gas Restaurant and on to the front straightaway where everyone has been tail happy in qualifying here at Monaco.
Yes, it's been great to see drivers with verve and a lot of flair throwing the cars around and getting wheel spin in places. But of course, We saw Schumacher do this on his penultimate qualifying lap, and he was a little bit sideways, nearly clouded the wall. But believe it or not, when you're sideways, you're not going forwards as well. And the next lap, he calmed it all down, kept about 2 foot off all the guardrails, and clocked in a wonderful time.
13 cars of the 24 starters remain in the race. Schumacher, Brundle, Berger, De Cesaris, Alesi, Alboreto, Leto, Herbert, Beretta, Pani, Comas, Lamy, and Belmondo. Right now the race leader closes in on Olivier Beretta. And there's the blast of sunshine I was talking about.
Nice little overtaking maneuver. And Beretta just kept over to one side to let the venison slide through. Very wise move.
A phenomenal performance by this Benetton team. At one point, just a few short years ago, they ran 5 different engines in this car in as many seasons. And they were somewhat ridiculed as perhaps being the most extraordinarily disorganized team in Formula 1, save perhaps Ferrari. And yet somehow they got it all straightened out and firmed up their driver lineup and established a relationship with Ford to use this phenomenal Zetec R engine that revs to over 14,500 RPM, makes about 750 horsepower for now. Of course, all of this may go up in smoke when new rules are attempted to be brought in by the governing body of the sport, the FIA, to try to bring horsepower figures down in Formula 1. There is Mark Blundell walking back. Derek Warwick, former Formula 1 driver, familiar to American audiences, working for the BBC this weekend.
You'll note that Alesi is catching up to Cesaris at a rate of knots, and no doubt will be easing him of his 4th position at any time at all, because, as you know, Alesi came in when he damaged his nose cone, not as badly as everybody thought, or as he thought, so playing safety, he came in, changed his nose, and off he's out there, obviously doing only his lazy nose, and that's catching up the guy in front.
Once more up the hill as the shadows begin to grow long here at Monaco. You see the media members queuing up to talk with Mark Blundell. You ride with Michael Schumacher through the blisteringly fast entry to the turns around the swimming pool. Lots more to come in our live coverage of the Grand Prix of Monaco. We are back live at the Grand Prix of Monaco with 20 laps remaining. Michael Schumacher leads Martin Brundle and Gerhard Berger, the only 3 cars remaining on the lead lap. Now Berger has been slowing just a bit, dropping back from Martin Brundle after they exchanged pit stops and were very close together on the racetrack. All of the top 3 cars lapping at about the same speed. The last lap 123.8 for Schumacher, 123.0 for Brundle, 123.5 for Berger. So once again, he mysteriously gets back up to speed.
Yeah, strange, isn't it? I mean, there again, we've got the same thing with Alesi and De Cesaris. Alesi was pulling him in just now, and now De Cesaris has pulled a second out on him. Alboreto is not far behind either, and Leto, strange enough, is right up there in 7th place, which I'm sure is far greater than he anticipated when he started this race. Johnny Herbert's having a good run in 8th place as well, and of course the little group of Herbert, Beretta, Panis, Comas and Lamy have stayed pretty well close together for, well, they're not that close at the moment, but that group have stayed in that order for some big time, like the whole hour of the last hour and a half of the race. They were watching Martin Brundle come down to the chicane, flicking through there. Just doesn't want to touch any of those curbs. We saw a Porsche flick over down those curbs this morning in the Porsche race, and my goodness me, it nearly turned the thing over. So you certainly don't want to hit them with the Formula 1 car.
I should point out, American Nick Ham finished 7th in that race.
His car looked a little second-hand by the end of it. He was trying to beat Jochen Mass to death with it.
Well, that's the kind of race it can be.
The only way over is over.
Great fun to watch. Martin Brundle back onto the start-finish straightaway, receiving the signals from his crew. 2nd place, 36 seconds and change behind race leader Michael Schumacher. Schumacher in that Ford-powered car could win the 7th straight Grand Prix for Ford, which of course took the last few races of the 1993 season. Astonishing performance from a V8 engine format that the experts said when everyone was considering normally aspirated engines, V8, V10, V12, no, they reckoned the V12 was the thing to have. Then Renault produced the astonishing performance of their V10, and now Ford and Cosworth have turned their Zetec R V8 into the power unit to have if you can't have the Renault in Formula 1.
I must reminisce just a little bit. In 1975, Mr. X and I won Le Mans driving a Ford V8 engine car, and we were only allowed to pull 7,500 revs, and here we are revving at twice that speed now.
Martin Brundle having another terrific race here in Monaco. He has been so good here over the years. Right now, he carries the fortunes of the McLaren team, which added him at the 11th hour to this team. In fact, they couldn't even guarantee him a drive in every race. He shares this seat ostensibly with Frenchman Philippe Ayot, in deference, no doubt, to the Peugeot engine crew, although Ayot is quite a fast driver in his own right.
Yes, I don't honestly think that he's in the same class as Martin. Martin's proved himself so many times. I think he's had a very rough career. Things have not gone right for him at the right time. But as he said the other day, this Peugeot engine is really working. When you consider that this is only the 4th race for the Peugeot engine, it's remarkable. It's so far this race, touch wood, is very reliable and has run extremely well and very, very fast indeed. And I'm sure there's a long way to go yet before they reach perfection.
Martin Brundle runs equal to his career best performance, second at Monza in 1992. We spoke with Niki Lauda about where Formula 1 needs to go. Here are the thoughts of the former triple world champion.
The first problem, I think, in Formula 1 is that the commercial side is running Formula 1. The commercial side is very important because without that, Formula 1 would not be where it is. So you have to divide it. You have to say to Bernie, you worry about the commercial side, and that's it. And then somebody else, either the FIA or part of the drivers, have to form a group to take care of safety. But if you mix it up, you will never succeed because commercial will always take over.
Niki Lauda knows a great deal about safety. He still bears the scars of his horrible Nürburgring crash and fire back in the 70s. You're riding along with Gerhard Berger, running in 3rd place. Now here's a look at some of the new rules that have been railroaded into Formula 1. Now these are not carved in stone, but supposedly 2 weeks from now the teams will be asked to reduce their rear underwing or diffuser that handles all the hot gases coming out of the exhaust. All parts of the front wing behind the foremost part of the front wheel must be removed, and the front wing end plates will be raised. Then, for the race after that, the Canadian Grand Prix at Montreal on the 12th of June, increased lateral protection for the driver's head. It could be raising the cockpit sides, could be roll bars for all we know, strengthening the lower front wishbone, since an autopsy has confirmed that Ayrton Senna was killed by the upper wishbone part from his right front wheel coming through his visor and cracking him on the skull. They will also increase the minimum weights to allow the engineers some latitude in making these changes. The cockpit openings will change. The cars will be required to use pump fuel that officials are saying they will go out and buy from designated gas stations in order to make sure there is a level playing field. They will also eliminate the engine airbox, which forces ram air into the engines just behind the driver's head, helping to create more horsepower. And then further changes for the German Grand Prix at mid-season, including introduction of the entire 1995 regulations for reduction of aerodynamic performance. And those go on and on. Now, while I should emphasize, these rules are not carved in stone, although you heard Max Mosley, president of the FIA, say, we're going to do it. Keep in mind that the teams may have something to say about all that.
Yes, I think we've heard a little bit about the teams. They said it's going to take 5 months to develop this new chassis. And even then, it's only developed the bottom of the chassis. And then, of course, as we all know, you have to get the aerodynamics right of the underneath of the car and the overtop of the car. So it's going to take some time. And, of course, for the big teams, it's very costly. And for the small teams, it's almost disastrous. So I think it's going to be a while before we really see everything come into force. But it's certainly the right direction. And the drivers feel the same way. They really want to slow these speeds down because as we've heard the other day, back during practice here, that one of the drivers, in fact, found it difficult to get full throttle the whole way around the circuit. He just couldn't get traction anywhere on the circuit because he had so much power.
15 laps to go in this race. Michael Schumacher has led everyone thus far en route to a possible 4th straight Grand Prix victory. Stay with us. Moneymaker here. Well, in fact, it's still probably the major moneymaker here. But it was considered something a little bit vulgar when it was first brought online. And now it is perhaps the most famous casino in all the world. Pedro Lamy getting a new nose on the Lotus in the pits.
Yes, we didn't see what he's been up to. But I'm sure he did something he shouldn't have done.
Consider the Lotus team. Now, we talked about the new rules that will basically change the face of Formula One. They are set to introduce their 1994, their new car, 2 weeks from now at Barcelona. They found out this weekend if the rules go through, they may have to start from scratch.
Yeah, it's so tough on these teams. The smaller teams are finding it so difficult. I mean, Pacific are right there on a knife edge of survival. And there's always the slowest team. There's always has to be a team coming last. But it's so sad to see that these fellows just haven't got the budget to continue. And really, I can't blame sponsors not wanting to be on the team that runs at the back of the field. It's very tough to find the way to the top.
No question about that. There you see Olivier Panis in the Ligier. His teammate Eric Bernard is out. Ligier, one of those teams once among the proud, the front runners in Formula One, back when Guy Ligier was spending $500,000, $600,000 a year and winning races with the likes of Jacques Lafitte. But they have fallen on hard times. Ligier sold his majority interest. They do have the rights to some Renault engines. And now it appears they will be bought by the Benetton team, and that could cause something of a shakeup among the front ranks.
It's interesting to note that Schumacher has slipped back a bit with his times. He's lapping in the 125s. Meanwhile, Martin Brundle is lapping in the 122s. But let's not forget that, in fact, Schumacher is quite a long way ahead. He's 26 seconds ahead at this point and has a bit of a cushion. Plus, he may well have had a tail ender or somebody he was lapping at that point.
7 drivers have won 4 straight races in Formula One competition. All 7 went on to win world championships. Michael Schumacher today goes for his 4th in a row. Recall 1992 when Nigel Mansell won the first 5. Through Casino Square, we follow the Ligier. Haven't had much opportunity to call their numbers this year.
Brundle's still clocking in good times. It's very interesting to see that. But as I say, it could well be just traffic, because that's what they've been doing when they had a clear lap, when they had 26s, when they had a bad lap.
Christian Fittipaldi makes his way back to the pits. Want to wish his uncle Emerson and all of the drivers attempting to qualify at Indianapolis today the best of luck. How about Lynn St. James out qualifying old Nige on the second row? Barring whatever happens today, there is still some bumping to be done.
I can't imagine Nigel slipping up to Lynn and saying, "Can you give me some tips?"
Oh, I can.
I can't imagine that.
Michael Schumacher, his last lap 124.8. Martin Brundle is still quicker.
And he's just pulled another second off Schumacher, but of course there are not so many laps to go. There's only 14 or 15 laps left.
Lashing through the tunnel. Back out into the sun along the harbor.
It was interesting the other day when we were interviewing some of the drivers, how the drivers felt that we all felt, the public all felt that Monaco is a very dangerous circuit, and after the incidents at Imola that the drivers wouldn't want to come here. But strangely enough, if you spoke with any of the drivers, they just said Monaco is just the greatest track to drive on. It's such a challenge that you just love it, and you haven't heard anybody here say, "Oh, it's too dangerous." They're all out there giving their best, and they love the place.
Did I just see Andrea De Cesaris running close together with one of the Ferraris?
Yeah, Lacey's 1.4 seconds behind him. Or is he? Yes, right there. Yeah, now we're right in there, and Lacey has been working him for a while, but he's only just suddenly started to climb up on him. Maybe there was some traffic that held De Cesaris up, although their lap times actually are very good. They're in the 24s. That's pretty good. The Schumacher's cracked in a 22.7, just to remind Martin that Martin Brundle can pull away if he wants to.
That battle between De Cesaris and Alesi is for 4th place. Don Alesi was once spoken of as people are speaking of Michael Schumacher these days as the coming man, the guy you wanted to have in your car. And yet, hard as that may be to believe, in all the years since, Jean Alesi has yet to win a race. Right now, Andrea De Cesaris trying to get around Olivier Beretta in order to keep Jean Alesi behind him and hold on to 4th straight. It is Schumacher, Brundle, and Berger up front. Stay with us. Back live at Monaco, you're watching the battle entering the harbor side. Andrea De Cesaris coming under fire from Jean Alesi for 4th place in the Grand Prix of Monaco.
Who would have believed that De Cesaris in the Jordan would have been up in 4th place when they only qualified 14th?
Standing by right now with Christian Fittipaldi is the man who normally drives that Jordan. Here's Eddie Irvine.
Hi, Bob. Thanks, Bob. I've got Christian with me here. Christian, the race was going fantastic. Great qualifying performance, and then very strong in the race. What happened?
Gearbox gave away. The car was running very good, and I was hanging in there. I was at one stage third, fourth in the race, and I think that if we went until the end, the chances of finishing in the top three today were very big.
Thanks, Christian.
I'll say this for the new rules regarding pit stops, refueling, and so forth. They have jumbled the order at the top of the grid, as Christian Fittipaldi said. He was in the running for a podium today before his gearbox gave out. You ride with Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. First in line, Andrea De Cesaris has gotten around Beretta in the red and white, LaRousse with the green tail. Now it's going to be Jean Alesi's job.
And it's not going to be easy because he's got to follow him all the way through the tunnel, but we've seen the top speed of the Ferrari being superior to everything else, so there's a fair chance he'll be able to slip by under braking as they come down in the chicane. No, far from it. Oh, he's right there. No, he's let him through. What a great piece of discipline from that driver in the LaRousse. Excellent piece of driving, kept right over. And he had to back off a long way in that case.
Beretta runs 2 laps down. These two cars, the Ferrari of Alesi and the Jordan of De Cesaris, are 1 lap down to the top 3 cars, Schumacher, Brundle, and Berger.
And here is Brundle, of course, not that far behind Alesi at this point, ready to presumably take another lap off him. I think I'm right in saying.
I believe you're right. What an extraordinary place Monaco is. Barely 300 yards wide and a half-mile long. In the 2 hours or so that it will take us to bring you this Grand Prix, you could just about walk around the entire place. But you would be tired when you finished.
Tell me about it. This another little gem here. We have Schumacher, as I would say, cracked in the fastest lap of the race with the 1:21.2. I haven't seen any lap better that he's done. A full 4 seconds quicker than Brundle and 5 seconds quicker than Berger. So he's not letting it slip from his grasp in these closing laps. He's just showing everybody that he can do it if he has to.
One program note, the sports reporters, regularly seen at 11 a.m. Eastern Time here on ESPN, will not be seen this week, but it will return at its regular time next week. The laps are coming down, but Michael Schumacher has been absolutely bulletproof here today. Schumacher, Brundle, and Berger, De Cesaris, Alesi, and Alboreto. McKelly is up in the points. Stay with us. Watching live late in the afternoon at Monte-Carlo, Monaco, as Jean Alesi of France lashes his brilliant red Ferrari around Resgas and rushes up to the start-finish straightaway. No, he doesn't. He slows down. Very slow.
Behind Martin, is that Brundle?
With Martin Brundle just ahead, it is Schumacher, Brundle, and Berger in the top 3 positions. Then De Cesaris, Alesi, and Michele Alboreto all 1 lap down. J.J. Leto, Olivier Beretta, Olivier Panis all 2 laps down. Eric Comas, Johnny Herbert in the Lotus 3 laps down. And Pedro Lamy in the other Lotus machine 5 laps back.
That was most strange how Brundle just sort of slowed right down and let Alesi catch him up. Now he seems to have pulled out the stops again and is off. Because Brundle is actually a whole lap ahead of Alesi at this point. But I would have thought Martin didn't want to drop too far.
Now you're aboard the LaRousse of Olivier Beretta, running in 8th place. Just behind the battle up ahead, into the tunnel. There he is. Gerard LaRousse, who was a part of Renault's efforts in Formula 1 for many years. Alain Prost won his first Grand Prix driving in a team organized by Gerard LaRousse, who is himself a pretty fine sports car driver, as I recall, Derek Bell.
Yeah, we raced quite a few times, and I never raced with him, but various races together. He actually drove Porsche during the early and the very important days, the 917s and so on. A very good driver.
As you see, 5 laps remaining in the race. There is Alesi. Pedro Lamy just ahead of him there in the green and white and yellow Lotus.
With Martin Brundle ahead of him. So Martin must have had a little bit of something going wrong there, and he just put it back together and off he goes.
He had been running about 24 seconds behind leader Schumacher. He's now 37 seconds behind, but his last lap was a very competitive 1:25.3, so whatever problem it was, Martin Brundle seems to have gathered himself back up.
Yes, actually, he was 24 seconds behind Schumacher, and then Schumacher got it together, and he pulled it back to about a 34-second gap. And there you are. Brundle had a moment or two and lost a couple of seconds, and he's sitting rather a long way behind Schumacher at this point. Schumacher, incidentally, his fastest lap was on lap 35 at a 1:20.076.
Once more through the tunnel with just a handful of laps remaining. We'll be back for more live coverage of the Grand Prix of Monaco. Nice seats up there on the street light, buddy. Back live at Monte-Carlo, where some fans look forward, some back over the grandstands. These are in the swimming pool area, from which you can see the entire harbor area on this 2-mile racetrack dotted with some 20 turns. The two Benetton teammates run together. Up front is J.J. Leto, although Leto runs 2 laps down in 7th spot. Behind him is teammate Michael Schumacher with 36.8 seconds in hand, and he'll have 2 laps to go next time he crosses the start-finish line. If the race were to end now, Michael Schumacher's 4th straight victory will give him 10 more points for a total of 40. Gerhard Berger, who runs in 3rd for Ferrari, would move into 2nd place with 10 points. Damon Hill, who was knocked out of the race, will score no more, but he will hold on to 7 and will remain tied for 3rd with Rubens Barrichello. And then there would be a tie between Nicola Larini, who of course does not drive for Ferrari now that Alesi is back, but Martin Brundle, who runs in 2nd place for McLaren, would jump up into a tie with Larini and Jean Alesi with 6 points. Down to the finish line they come in nice order for a photograph anyway.
Exactly. I got the impression just now that in fact that Schumacher had actually got past Leto to lap him for the 2nd time, and then Schumacher pulled over and let Leto go back by again. I got that impression. I thought maybe Schumacher had a problem, but maybe he's been told that he mustn't lap his teammate too often.
Or perhaps he just doesn't want to rub salt in the wound. J.J. Leto has had an absolutely abysmal time here this weekend. Actually, he's had a pretty rough year thus far. He signed his contract, went out to test the car, backed it into a wall at about 140 miles an hour, cracked a vertebra in his neck, and was out of competition for several races.
In fact, Leto is lapping about a second a lap quicker than Schumacher at this time. One of the quickest laps Leto's done all day, in fact. Brundle is 36 seconds behind, and Berger is some long way behind that, so it's there's nothing very exciting happening down the field at this time, which is a great pity. I love to see grandstand finishes, particularly at Monaco, and we've seen a few over the years.
Benetton crew, what an extraordinary job they have done, keeping their cars on the racetrack and giving Michael Schumacher the weapon he needs to display his extraordinary talent. In case you're wondering whether a Formula 1 car has ever gone in the harbor here, there is Jackie Ick, speaking of living legends of Formula 1. He is the chief steward here, I believe.
Yep. He doesn't talk to me when he's here, and he talks to me when we're at Le Mans. It's funny, isn't it?
We're beginning the last lap. In fact, 2 drivers have gone into the harbor. Alberto Ascari and Paul Hawkins at different times. In case you recall, the movie Grand Prix, in which a car went into the harbor, that was a recreation with a stunt driver in the machine, as I recall.
Yes, not a very nice way to go. And I remember in those early days, in fact, they always used to have divers sitting there in the boats waiting for the drivers to fall in. That wasn't really a very nice way to start a race. Look, as you went around the warm-up lap, seeing guys waiting there with their tanks on their backs ready to go out and pick you out if you flipped over the edge.
They are still out there, in fact.
But you just can't see them because the guardrail's there. They're getting ready.
They're looking a little nonchalant there. Just a few corners remain. And the flags begin to wave. The German flag in black, red, and yellow for Michael Schumacher.
He's breaking history every time he wins a race with Germans, that's for sure. No German has ever won 4 or 5 times in a row. 4 times in this case.
It appears our podium will be Schumacher, Brundle, and Berger. A Benetton, a McLaren, and a Ferrari as Jackie Ick awaits with the checkered flag. Let's see if Leto will pull over and allow his teammate to take the checkered flag unencumbered. Now Schumacher goes over to the guardrail to wave at his crew and then just crosses at a brisk walking pace. What an astonishing season thus far for Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, super driving. He's really come on. He's developed so much. I mean, when you think he's really very inexperienced, and he's driving in such a professional way. And of course, it must be wonderful to have such a professional team behind you, everybody rooting for you.
There is Martin Brundle, who will equal his best performance in Formula 1 today with a second place, as he continues to ingratiate himself to the McLaren team with terrific performances. He takes the checkered flag in second. We'll be back in just a moment. This ESPN Speed World presentation has been brought to you by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. And by Peerless Faucet. Get more out of your faucet than just water. Back live at Monte-Carlo. Here's a look at the final results of the 52nd running of the great Grand Prix of Monaco. Michael Schumacher with his 4th straight Grand Prix victory. Martin Brundle in the McLaren finishes second, followed by Gerhard Berger in third for Ferrari. The other points-paying positions, Andrea De Cesaris with a great drive for Eddie Jordan, followed by Jean Alesi in the second Ferrari, and Michele Alboreto in his Minardi. Through the 12th spot, J.J. Leto, Derek Daly, your final thoughts on this great race?
Derek Daly, unfortunately, happens to be at Indianapolis. I thought it was a great race. It was a great pity for me that Hakkinen fell out so soon. I thought that was going to be the act of the whole race. Very exciting right up towards the end, and then, of course, it climbed out down towards the end, and it was just a nice run over the line for Schumacher.
There you see Michael Schumacher. Let's take a look at the updated points. Schumacher now with a perfect total of 40. Gerhard Berger, as I mentioned earlier, moves into second, followed by Damon Hill and Barrichello, who did not finish the race. Martin Brundle moves into a tie for third place with 6 points. Make that 4th place with 6 points. The constructors' points, Benetton with 40, Ferrari with 22, and Jordan with 10. Checkered flag coverage of the Grand Prix of Monaco will be coming your way on Saturday, May 21st at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on ESPN. And we hope you'll make a note of the next stop on the Grand Prix Tour, Sunday, May 29th, the Grand Prix of Spain from Barcelona at 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time, live here on ESPN. Michael Schumacher of Germany has made Monaco his personal stage today, and he breaks up a long line of great champions dominated by the late Ayrton Senna. We would be remiss if we did not pay final tribute to Senna here. We will do that now. I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Bell and Eddie Irvine. So long, everyone.